I want to talk about how to care for yourself after a microaggression, and then also during a microaggression. So after a microaggression, the number one thing that I can say to take care of yourself is be kind to yourself. If you've experienced a microaggression, you feel that, your heart beating, that feeling of isolation, frustration, anger, do something good for your body afterwards. So, like, if you can, like, take a hot bath, do a little bit of exercise or stretching, do some yoga or some deep breathing exercises, play some music, if whether that's turning on a CD or MP3s, I guess would probably be, turn on iTunes. Or if you play an instrument or you sing, play some music, sing. There's something about that creativity and the play of that will help release good chemicals into your body to help combat some of the stress. Drink some hot tea, something like soothing. Play a game, with somebody, dance. Do something in your body to remind yourself of the goodness of life and the goodness of your life. So be kind to yourself. The second thing is talk to someone safe. So if you already know of someone safe that you can talk to about it, talk to somebody, let them know that you experienced this thing, that it happened, how it made you feel. And the important thing with this is to know that you're not alone. Now, it may be the case, especially if you're a young person living at home, it's possible that you may not have someone safe to talk to. Try to find someone. If you can't find someone safe right away, look online, find someone on the internet that you can chat with who is safe. Find a teacher, find a friend that you don't have to explain what a microaggression is to them, and talk to them about it. It's important to be able to talk about these experiences, that it doesn't just have to live inside of you. The third thing is to feel what it is that you need to feel. A lot of times in a microaggression, when it's happening, you may not feel safe enough to be able to just feel what you feel, whether that's sadness or anger or frustration, and so you may stuff it somewhere in your body. So for me, that stress lives like right in my lower back, and so I feel it later in the day, and it's important for me to go back in my mind to that situation, remember what I felt like. Oh, I felt so whatever it was, angry or sad, and maybe I cry about it, maybe I yell about it, maybe I dance around really furiously as a way to get that frustration out, but it's important to let yourself feel those things, because if you keep just sort of tucking them away into different parts of your body, those memories and those things will take an effect. They sort of clog you up, and so it's important to feel that. And so sometimes you have to do the feeling part before you can talk about it with somebody else, and sometimes actually talking to somebody else will let you access what it felt like. So you can play around with that and see what works for you, if it's the feeling first or the talking first. For different personalities, it's going to look different. Maybe you write about it in a journal, and then you can feel it. But it's important to let yourself feel those things and talk to somebody safe. The fourth thing is to contradict whatever that message was. Those messages that say you're less than because you're not whatever this thing is, you don't fit this category of privilege. It's important for you in that situation to contradict it, to be able to look in the mirror at yourself and say, I am good, I am worthwhile, I am a wonderful human being, and in talking to other people, to let them give you contradictory messages that contradict those lies about you, and speak to the goodness of who you are as a human being, that call out the beauty and the goodness of your life, who you are, your body, your experience of the world. That's so important. We place so little value on this, but it's really important to contradict those messages. The last thing I'll say is the fifth thing is practice how you want to respond in the moment. So after the fact, it's like maybe you freeze up and you don't say anything when something's happening. Then later you're able to feel and talk about it and care for yourself and dance or have a cup of tea. But then practice every once in a while. Practice, how would I want to respond in that situation? And maybe that looks like flipping someone off, and you practice that. And sometimes you practice it so you can do it, and sometimes you practice it so you don't have to do it. Practice, being able to tell them, I'm not going to answer that question. I don't think that's a very fair question. Or practice getting up and moving to a different part of the bus that feels safer. Practicing those things in your head allows you to remember in the moment that you have agency and you have options. So then in the moment when you're experiencing a microaggression, these are the strategies that I try to use during a microaggression. The first thing is to decide if I'm safe or not. So if I'm in a situation where I think I might be in danger of real harm, then the first thing for me to do is to remove myself from that situation, to actually physically move. This is so important to know that you can do this. And the other thing is to remind yourself, so if I'm in a situation and I'm deciding, am I safe or not, and I realize I'm physically safe, but the thing that I'm experiencing right now is triggering these fight or flight or freeze kind of responses in me. And so my brain and my body don't know that I'm safe in this moment, and so I have to remind myself and actually say to myself in my head, it's okay, I'm safe. And so in that moment, I take some deep breaths. And I remind myself, it's okay, you're safe. And then the next thing that I would say is it's always okay to phone a friend. If there's somebody else sitting there, if somebody says something to you, there's a microaggression that's happening, and you have a friend who's sitting with you, who's a person who doesn't share the same dynamic of oppression that you do. So I'm sitting there as a gay man, and there is a straight person who's sitting next to me, and somebody comes up and they say something to me and it's a microaggression. If I know that the person with me, who is not gay, has worked on their privilege in this area, then it's totally fine for me to say, you know what, I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to let them talk to you about why that's problematic. And so it's like phoning a friend. It's letting somebody who has the same, they sit on the same side of the privilege-oppression dynamic that's at play here with the person who is doing the microaggression. And instead of me explaining to them what's wrong with this situation, I'm going to let this other person who has privilege do that explaining. That's totally fine, and a great way to ask your friends to step up, and to care for yourself in that moment of the microaggression. The next thing that I would say is always do self-care before you do education. So in a moment when a microaggression is happening and somebody, some interaction is going on, before I, school this person on what they're doing that's wrong, the thing that I need to do is care for myself. And so it's more important for me to breathe and regulate my body and allow those stress chemicals and things in my body to like downgrade a little bit. And so by taking myself out of the situation, come back to the conversation later, it's always more important to care for myself in that moment than to educate that person in the moment. They've got a whole lifetime ahead of them to keep working on this stuff, and you want to make sure that you have just as full of a lifetime ahead of you. And so care for yourself. Be kind to yourself in that moment before you overexert yourself while you're already stressed and experiencing those things, to then go out on a limb to try to educate somebody else. The next thing I would say is somebody asked you a question like, but where are you really from? Or how is it that you justify yourself by the Bible? It's okay to opt out of answering and to just say, I'm not going to answer that question. And not say anything more. You don't owe that person anything in that moment. If they've just, pushed you, especially in those situations where they're asking you to justify yourself, and it's one of those things where they're asking you to participate in your own oppression, you don't owe them anything, and you can just opt out of answering and say, I'm not going to answer that, and walk away. And then the last thing I would say, once you've, over time, practiced ways that you would want to respond, and you've gotten good at caring for yourself well in those moments, when you want to, and you feel like you're able to care for yourself well while you're doing it, then you can reflect what's being asked of you back to that other person. And so this is not something I would say to do first. I would say this is something after a long time, maybe years of practicing caring for yourself well, that you would get to the point where when someone comes up and they say, where are you really from? That's where you can reflect back to them, not the question, maybe it is well, where are you really from? Or maybe it's, so I hear what you're asking me, and because of the color of my skin, I realize that there's more at play here, and I'm wondering what it is that you want from me right now. Or maybe it looks like, so I hear you asking me to explain how it is that I read the Bible and interact with my sexual orientation, but I also realize that you have a lot of privilege in this, and I'm not sure if you've ever really questioned about the way that you read the Bible and how you live out your sexual orientation. So it feels unfair what you're asking me right now. Those are responses that are really hard to do until you learn how to care for yourself and breathe and listen to your body. And those are the places where it's great to be able to phone a friend and ask somebody else to ask those questions and hold that mirror back up to that person. But the point in those situations is out of kindness to yourself and kindness to the other person, to actually say, you know what, you're inviting me to participate in holding up this oppressive dynamic, but right now I'm going to lower this wall and call us both human beings. Now what do you want to do about that? And so that is the kind of response that I hope for myself, but it's also the kind of response that I'm not always able to do. And I have to make sure that I'm being kind to myself before I'm trying to be kind or gracious to someone else in that. And so there are times when it's totally appropriate to say, hell no, I'm not going there with you right now, or no, I'm not going to answer that question, or can you respond to them right now? I just need to leave. And so those are some of the ways that I interact with microaggressions. And I hope that this has been helpful to some of you who maybe wanted to know more about microaggressions, or what they feel like, or how you might respond for caring for yourself in them and after them. I'd love to hear if any of you have your own experiences of microaggressions that you want to talk about. If you have strategies that you use to care for yourself when you experience these things that you want to share with others who may be looking for things that would work for them to care for themselves. I hope you'll post those in comments or make a video replying to this to tell your story, and I hope that this has been helpful. Alright, thanks so much. Peace. This is Daniel, and you're watching my YouTube channel. It's a bunny rabbit!